Meet Ms. Prudence Ngwenya, the driving force behind the Directorate of Women, Gender and Youth at the African Union Commission. I'm talking about a person in charge of the biggest percentage of the population of Africa.
The task on your shoulder is really, really heavy. You are dealing with over 77% of the population of Africa, age below 35.
Because of this huge responsibility, she gets sleepless nights thinking about the future of the young people and women on the continent.
What gives you sleepless nights?
Young people, women, the
Why?
youth bulge.
Why?
Under Ms. Prudence's leadership, the Directorate plans to implement groundbreaking initiatives, paving way for progress and change on the continent. In this video, we are glad to unveil the message she has for the African youth and women.
Specifically the young people.
And women.
Let me speak to them. Specifically, I want to address the young people.
Yes.
Article 26 of the African Youth Charter
Yes.
says that you are custodians of your own development.
So, take the first step now. Subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to join us as we delve into matters concerning women and youth on our continent. Africa needs you.
Let me welcome you once again to Channel 63, the channel that is committed to Africa. And in that context, we are looking at the issues surrounding Africa Continental Free Trade Area and Agenda 2063. And that we're talking about women, gender, and youth today. We are privileged to be in the House of Africa, and I'm referring to the African Union Commission. And today we happen to be in the Directorate of Women, Gender, and Youth. And we are talking to the director in charge of that directorate in the person of Miss Prudence Ngwenya. Miss Prudence, it's an honor to be in your wonderful office. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you very much. And how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm asking how are you doing because I know that the task on your shoulder is really, really heavy. You are dealing with over 77% of the population of Africa, age below 35. How does it feel?
It's a mammoth task, but very important because we have a lot of players and stakeholders that we are pulling and leveraging and who are supporting the mandate. And that includes the women and the young people themselves. Unlike before, they are at the center of their own development.
Interesting. So let's begin by, how did it begin? Where have you come from? And how did you get here?
Oh, a very interesting story, actually. A story of exactly what the Directorate is trying to do, unleashing the potential of women and
let me add that. The reason why I'm asking this question, because a lot of young people today, with a microwave mindset, when they see people like you, they think that, oh, you got it overnight. And so what can young people learn from your story? And that's why we're asking the question, where did you come from and how did it all begin?
Very important question, actually. And I was saying that it's really the story of why the Directorate exists. And so it's a 360 degrees. I've come full circle because and it's important for young people to understand that I positioned and I was in spaces that allowed for my potential to be unleashed. But basically, I started work with young people in my own country, Eswatini, the beautiful kingdom of Eswatini, as you can see.
Yeah.
And I did a lot there around youth engagement. And they always say, you start, the charity begins at home. So I did a lot there, and to a point where I started doing things at a regional level when I worked for the UN. And then I got to the African Union Commission. And by the way, most interestingly, when I got to the African Union Commission way back in 2012, I was a young person. And I came to work in the youth division. And I've grown through the ranks. So important to me to mention that the African Union Commission itself has unleashed my potential and really made me to do what I do now because they recognized my potential and they supported me to be where I am today.
Interesting. So let's talk about your directorate. What exactly does the Directorate for Women, Gender and Youth, what do you do?
Yes, so in speaking about what the directorate does, let's start by positioning the conversation to say, what does the AU do? Because
that will help.
what we do responds to what the AU do on a particular thematic. We have Agenda 2063, which is a blueprint for development on the continent.
Absolutely.
And it speaks to a certain things that need to happen for the continent to be developed. And our positioning as the Women, Gender and Youth Directorate is to make sure that we unleash the potential of women and young people to be key players in the development of the continent.
Right.
We do that around a couple of things, and I think we'll get into that conversation.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Now, from your bio, you provide strategic direction or guidance on AU's mandate on youth development, while at the same time providing strategic oversight. Explain the two.
Strategic oversight, because again, we are the African Union Commission, and it's very important for us to have a landscape analysis of what is happening with women and young people on the continent.
Right.
So our strategic interventions are based on even understanding from an evidence point of view on what is happening at the oversight level, and then provide strategic oversight and guidance based on that. Where does it itch the most for the young people and the women on the continent?
Okay.
And based on that, this is where the continent should do. Again, understanding that the Africa Union Commission basically is responsible for establishing a position or setting the agenda for particular thematics. And we set the agenda for gender, for women and young people, and gender, women and youth empowerment. So that's where the strategic oversight comes from.
Okay, so let's focus on the directorate and the specific operational pillars that you engage in. What are these strategic pillars?
Let me tell you, and I don't want to speak big English. I'm just going to tell you.
You're
in
talking
a
to
very,
young people,
very,
so
yes,
absolutely everyday English.
In a very, very simple
everyday English.
term.
Let's go everyday
Look,
English.
There are 4 pillars
Right.
of the work that we do, and remember, we're speaking women and young people, but we're also speaking gender.
Right.
Gender says it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman. It could be a man.
Absolutely.
Like we're speaking about positive masculinity and how to involve younger men into this conversation. So I'll come to that. But basically, 4 big pillars.
Right.
Pillar number 1 says, how do we open up spaces for women and young people to be able to engage and for us to unleash their potential? So pillar number 1, open up spaces. Look, since time immemorial, women and young people do not have the same sort of opportunities in accessing, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, leadership positions, representation generally. So this area of our work is really about fighting for inclusion, fighting for parity, fighting for a space that opens up and allows women to compete the same way as the male counterparts. Right. That's space number 1.
Okay.
Pillar number 2 comes from a realization that says, okay, so if we open up the spaces and the spaces are open, what if these women don't have the capacity to compete in these same spaces? So pillar number 2 focuses on capacity development for women and young people. This is where we do quite a number of things, including getting young people into employability skills, building capacity on the ACFTA, building capacity on this, or even training young entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. But basically we're saying, you people, we're capacitating you to be able to take advantage of the spaces that were opened at the policy level. Space number 3 speaks to health and well-being.
Right.
It says, if my mental health is not okay, if my health is not okay, or if I'm in an environment where there's issues with security and peace, or the climate is not conducive, I'm speaking about climate as the weather.
Sure.
None of these 2 spaces matter. If my mental health is not okay, I'm not going to be able to take advantage of these spaces. I'm not going to go for capacity building, or whether the spaces that you've opened in terms of the inclusion and the parity agenda. So that is a space that focuses on programs that deal with health, sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights, peace and security, which is an important area even led by the Department of Peace and Security, as well as our special envoy on women, peace and security. But things around well-being and health. The last and the most important space is a space around voices. the women themselves, the young people themselves. How do we make sure that their voices are influencing all these other spaces? How do we build networks of women and young people so that they speak together in one voice and they define their issues, they define the solutions, and they work with us in these spaces? And they also climb and take them up to advocacy spaces where they speak about their own issues. Basically, nothing for them without them. So those are the 4 big pillars.
So if I'm trying to, I guess I'm trying to let the average young person, listening to you, to understand exactly how does this really connect with them. In every, country, the 55 member states, each country has a ministry for youth, and at the same time, a national youth council, most of them. So I guess I'm trying to understand, what is the connection between your directorate and the member state ministry of youth and the national youth council within the 4 pillars that you've spoken about?
Perfect. So what the AU does, I spoke about this a little bit earlier. We set the agenda.
Agenda, sure.
We set the agenda and say that, for example, let me make an example of the Maputo Protocol. It's an agenda, it's a normative framework. The African Youth Charter is an agenda, is a policy, is a normative framework.
Sure.
There's quite a few. There are even strategies. The positive masculinity as a strategy or as an initiative. But what it does, it sets a normative framework, and then through our specialized technical committees, which is ministers. For example, this directorate, we do ministers of gender. We meet with ministers of gender annually.
Absolutely.
We meet with ministers of youth every 2 years. This is where we take the normative framework, the agenda, to say, honorable ministers, this is the agenda, this is where it matters for young people, and this is where we need to see action. And they come to these meetings to report about progress on each one of these things. And most importantly, we also then work with countries to do experience sharing. If we feel that Ghana is doing well on a particular area, we will bring Swaziland to learn from Ghana, or we'll create forums where the countries can learn from each other. But most specifically, for young people, they came to us at some point and said, yes, policies are good, normative frameworks are good, agendas are good, but we want concrete opportunities. We want you to touch me. I want you to touch me as a young person. This is why His Excellency, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, launched the 1 million by 2021 initiative, which has grown to become the 1 million next level, which basically is an initiative that is run by the African Union Commission, working with our member states to bring concrete opportunities to young people on 4 E's and H: education, employment, entrepreneurship, engagement, and health and well-being. It's positioned as a public-private youth partnership that brings everybody to the table to say, let's deliver for young people.
So as the director of the directorate, when you sit back and you look at the trajectory, how things are going on the continent regarding youth and women, what's your assessment?
It's very interesting because I was a young person not long ago, but I'm a woman, and I'm going to be a woman for a very long time.
Yes.
I think there's progress. Let me even start
Absolutely.
from
There's
there.
no doubt about
There's
it.
progress in quite a number of areas. And let me make an example of women. The Maputo Protocol is an apex instrument for women's rights on the continent. We're beginning to see some progress. Progress at the level of member states coming up to see we recognize this as an agenda that we want to run in our countries. And also countries saying, now we are going to domesticate it in our countries. I mean, of course, there are challenges here and there where now we need to build capacity. How do you actually practically then implement and domesticate and implement it at country level? So the same with issues of young people. I think if I can just make an example of one thing, I don't know, a lot of the African Union member states actually at least have a youth fund.
Absolutely.
At country level.
That's true.
However, the challenge is there's still a lot that needs to be done. There's still some gaps, and we still need to continue pushing and delivering for them.
So, I mean, I know a lot of the issues we've talked about dovetails into Agenda 2063. But one of the, I mean, my coming here to talk to you particularly is one of the key issues is about youth unemployment. I know you've talked about 1 million opportunities and all of that. Are you concerned about the youth unemployment on the continent?
Actually, yes. If you want a simple answer, yes. and very much concerned because I think it's one of the biggest issue that we have. But also, do you realize that a lot of the challenges that we have on the continent dovetail from unemployment? Let me make an example. A young woman will face gender-based violence because they are relying on somebody, they cannot do their own things. They'll end up in some situations so everything, we believe that one of the biggest things we can do, particularly for young people, but also for women, is to make sure that economically they are included. This is really important because it specifically speaks to the Women and Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Initiative of the African Union Commission, which is, by the way, a strategic response of the African Union Commission to the decade for women financial inclusion, 2020 to 2030. An important initiative that seeks to address issues of unemployment for women and young people, but more broadly, economic and financial inclusion for women and young people. Interestingly, it is championed by His Excellency the President of Ghana, as well as Her Excellency the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union.
I guess I'm asking this because, if you look at the landscape, almost in every country, the unemployment rate keeps rising. Graduates are coming out of school, they don't have jobs. Young people who are already in the system don't have jobs. Even those with TVET skills and all of that are not having jobs. So the question is, what is your directorate in conjunction with the member states doing about this? Because it's becoming a ticking bomb.
Yeah, it really is. And we're doing things, but they're not enough. And I think more and more we're seeing that whatever we're doing is not enough. But I think it's also just that realization again that we have a mandate as the African Union, and our mandate sits at the policy level.
Sure.
So in terms of policies, we have strategies, all of them. Lots of them, beautiful ones.
Yes.
But I think it's beginning to also challenge us to say, how do we move from policy
to implementation,
but also making sure that our policies touch the people,
the young people.
So again, I'm not going to say because of all of this, the AU is going to go to countries and implement, because it's not even impossible.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with 3 Ps in this conversation: policies, partnerships, and the people, the young people or the women.
Right.
It's becoming much more important for us to make sure that the policies have a bridge, and in this bridge they're the partners. So it's then how, as the African Union Commission and the people who are responsible for the policies are able to bring the bridge, make sure that partners or partnerships, we build an ecosystem around the issue of unemployment so that we can touch the last P, which is the people.
So when you sit on your desk, do you feel that the member states really feel your presence as a directorate in the implementation or formulating of their national policies with regard to women and youth?
I think so, actually.
What
think
makes
so.
you think so?
And you asked me this question at the right time, because we just came from the summit where conversations were reverberating. Specifically, let me make an example about the trade, the ACFTA trade on women and young people.
We're coming there.
And this is the member states that actually endorsed it. But they also endorsed quite a number of other things that touch on issues of women and young people, specifically the Convention on Ending Violence Against Women. So I feel them because remember, our mandate comes from them. They giving us a policy direction. We then need to work with the ministers. And again, I told you, annually we meet with gender ministers. Every 2 years we meet with ministers of youth. So it's a full circle for
Do you
us.
feel frustrated sometimes as a director?
Everybody gets frustrated.
I mean, in terms of, for example, you have met with ministers and gender ministers, youth ministers, formulated certain things, agreed on certain things, and they come back and nothing is done.
I think, let me tell you where my frustration comes from. My frustration comes from, sometimes I just wish I was a magician, because I feel that the pace that we're moving is slow.
Yeah.
All of us. And this is the nature of our institutions. This is the nature of humans. But not necessarily to say, pinpoint and say, it's because of member states or it's because of the AU. Some things need to take time to actually mature into things. But I really want to say that at least I feel that at the conversation level, we all agree that things need to be done.
But you and I know conversation doesn't make the impact. It starts from there
I was going to say that it starts from there. So we are moving. That's the slowness that I'm talking about, because now we want to.
Yeah. I guess you see, I'm raising this issue. If you take that generation, now 10 years has passed.
Yeah.
Right? In the next maybe 40 years, we're supposed to get to where we are. Are we really on the right course?
We are on the right course, but we need to still do more. We've done an evaluation of the first 10 years of the implementation of Agenda 2060, and that's some key lessons from there. So the most important thing is...
Do you mind to share some of the lessons? With regard to women, gender, and youth?
Yes, definitely. So the
on
most
the scale
important...
of 1 to 10, if you look at the assessment that has been done so far, how would you rate it?
I don't know if I can scale it on a scale of 1 to 10, but I'm going to say that progress has been made.
Yeah, but how do we quantify that?
More needs to be done. Let me put it at 6, 7 and say...
Really?
Yeah, and say much more needs. Remember, this was the foundational years. So again, foundational years, it lends us into the second decade of Agenda 2063, and it allows us now to implement the things that we tested in the first decade.
Anyway, I want to move on to the aspiration 6 of the Agenda 2063. An Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of the African people. Here in particular, if you talk about African people now, it's about women and youth. How are we going to realize it in the context of all that we've discussed? Yes, we are making progress, but if you compare what we are doing with that of China, it took China 40 years to be where they are. We've already spent 10 years. And you are saying on a scale of 1 to 10, you give it maybe 6 points. How are we getting our young people and the women in particular involved to ensure that we can achieve this aspiration?
Yes, I think very important. And again, I think it's important to look at these conversations and look at the African Union Commission as a player, but it actually requires many more players into the field. So for me and from where I'm sitting, first of all, unleash the potential of women and young people. You need to bring everybody on the table. So one of the things that are important is to build efficient ecosystems. How do we make sure that banks are responding, or the fintechs, financial institutions are responding, but also how do we make sure that traditional leaders are responding to the needs of young people? How do we make sure that health systems are strengthened in a way that they're... So it's building an ecosystem, is making sure that we don't just position ourselves and say, ministers of youth must deliver. No, it's building an ecosystem that is efficient and that delivers, and understanding that it has to come from all of this places.
And what sort of ecosystem are we building or have we built so far? That focuses mainly on women and youth. I've spoken to the chief executive of the AE Trade Group, for example. We went there, we interviewed them, and they are doing a fantastic job. And I know they do some bit of work with you guys. So what are some of the pillars within the ecosystem that are driving this agenda?
I gave you an example, but let me give you another example, specifically an ecosystem for women and young people.
Right.
I spoke to you about the Women and Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Initiative.
Sure.
Specifically, this is a public-private women-youth partnership. What it does is that the AU has a space. I'm speaking AU and OGADS. ACFTA has a space there with the protocol, but also banks. We have banks as part of this. We've got technology, the M-Pesas, the e-wallets, all of these institutions at different levels who are being brought together. So it's a forum that brings together all these players to say, how do we address economic and financial inclusion for women and young people? By the way, the ecosystem, the Wi-Fi ecosystem, seeks to unleash unlock $100 billion US dollars to reach 10 million young women. We cannot do this as the AU. That's not money that the AU does.
No, that's not possible.
So I'm speaking to you about the ecosystem because what it does is that it pulls two things. We need to, I don't want to use crack the whip, but we need to work with the ecosystem to make sure that it happens for women and young people. But we also need to put an accountability framework behind it to say 100 billion. Standard Bank, how much are you? MTN, how much are you contributing? EcoBank and central bank governors, you need to. So that's.
But I guess it's not only how much are you contributing. Is the fund getting to the young people themselves?
It's
for example, that. I mean, we'll come to SMEs development, but one of the critical issues about that is crowding out young people from SME space, for example, is financing. And I know the AU has some, programs of that. We'll talk about that. But how do you ensure that all these things get to the young people themselves as a directorate, working with, in conjunction with the member states?
Yeah. This is why, again, it comes back to the conversation on the ecosystem. That's why on the ecosystem, we've actually built clusters. There are 3 clusters. The clusters are focusing on, there's a cluster that focuses on financial inclusion, which is the access to loans, access to credit, saving schemes, all of those things. And specifically, the people on that clusters are people that are interfacing with the person, the young person, the woman, directly. So we work with them. Remember I said we make it happen. So we basically make sure that we leverage these ones and we build an accountability system for them to be able to respond to that.
I guess I'll be interested in seeing some evaluation that has been done. Look, I've done this work for a number of years, and like I told you before we came to the set. How are we able to measure, for example, that whether it's loan, whether it's assets or whatever, young people and women in particular, look, if you take SMEs in the informal sector, and I know the ECA has just completed a study on cross-border trade, majority of these people are young people and women. And one of the critical challenges they have is access to finance, access to the market. So how do we measure that all these fantastic programs and policies that we have put in place, young people are really having access to these opportunities?
Very important, actually, because, again, as part of this initiative, we're building a monitoring, evaluation, and learning system behind it.
Good.
Annually,
you are building, or you've built?
No, it's a new initiative. It was launched last year.
Okay, good.
So we are saying, this directorate is new, by the way. I should have mentioned it.
Really?
It was established in 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
As part of the reform process.
That's about,
yes. So this initiative was launched last year.
Okay.
We are working towards an annual Davos-style kind of a conversation, which is going to answer all of those things. And we want to open ourselves up to say, we also want to know how much of this is actually reaching the young person. Remember, I threw 2 figures to you, 100 billion, and I spoke about 10 million women and young people.
Right.
We want to count and say, this is 800 out of the 10 million, and they are coming from, it's a certain Prudence Ngwenya from Eswatini, it's a certain Emmanuel from Ghana, actual human beings that are benefiting from.
No, I like your openness and frankness. That it started just last year, and let's see how it goes. And I hope that the young people of Africa can get some commitment from you, that you're going to make sure that there's effective monitoring to ensure that they are getting access to these things. Because most often what happens is that politicians jump on these things, and then the young people don't get it.
Yeah.
So I hope that the young people, that's your camera, they can get you directors saying, yes, young people, I'm in there for you. Women, I'm in there for you. I'm going to make sure that we are doing effective monitoring to ensure that you have access to that. That's your camera.
Specifically the young people.
And women.
Let me speak to them. Specifically, I want to address the young people.
Yes.
Article 26 of the African Youth Charter says that you are custodians of your own development. What that means is that we encourage youth-led advocacy. If the African Union Commission, don't look at it, if an African Union Commission comes up with a strategy and says we want to reach da-da-da-da by this time, it's your responsibility to call us into action and say, you promised, you made this promise, where are you, how far are you with, and most importantly, we have an office of the youth envoy, of the chairperson, and her job is to collect these voices from young people so they can keep the African Union Commission responsible and accountable to young people. We also have an envoy for women, and this is the space for this constituency to be able to come back to us and say, you promised this, you said you'll do this. How far are we with it?
I must applaud the AU. I mean, for the first time, we are seeing the AU focusing on young people with the establishment of the directorate and also the youth envoy. I've written to her. I'm looking forward to interviewing her as well. And I guess it's not just about creating all these spaces, but ensuring that your programs are impacting directly on the young people, which is key. Now, let's move on to gender-based violence. Where are we now with regard to addressing this particular gargantuan enemy of Africa?
Yeah, no, this is an area that really is depressing because I think we make a lot of progress,
right,
and then
all of a sudden
it looks bleak.
Yeah.
for the continent again.
Which means there
I
are
think
some underlying factors.
exactly,
Yeah.
which is what we spoke about in the beginning. There will be underlying factors here and there, and we're beginning to say, let's address
Right.
these factors. But we're seeing progress, but there's more that needs to be done. This is actually why there are two specific initiatives, and I want to speak to them.
Please.
The positive masculinity leadership initiative, basically putting and entrusting our leaders. And when I say leaders, I'm saying it sits at the level, it's championed by the president of DRC, but there's a circle of champions, other presidents around him, and they're specifically leading this agenda for the continent.
Right.
It's let's get our males involved. Let's get our men involved. Let's get our boys involved into this conversation, because again, trying to speak to something without involving the actual people that as a partner, it will not work. So that's a very important initiative for us, and we're really looking forward to it. It has done a lot of work, and specifically interesting is that this recent summit put again the issue of the negotiation of the convention on ending violence against women. So this is a very mammoth task, and the commission, the AU actually as a body is working towards that convention around, again, setting the agenda, the normative framework that countries can peg into, and it will run at country level.
I'm sure you know that a lot of the issues to do with gender-based violence happen in the private sector, especially at the workplace and all that. Is there any collaboration between this directorate and private sector, for example,
I think
in addressing this issue?
Yeah.
And in talking about that, if you can give us a sense of the economic impact, of gender-based, or the economic costs that we can look at from gender-based violence.
Yeah, let me say that again. Gender-based violence. I'm speaking about partnership with men.
Right.
But it requires.
By the way, a
partnership.
lot of men too are suffering from gender-based violence.
Exactly.
Let's face that.
It's a known fact. It's an open secret. Yes.
Sure.
So every partner needs to come to the table.
Absolutely.
Private sector, public sector, men, women, boys, everybody needs to come to the table. It affects everyone. But of course, we know that the numbers, because we don't want men to hijack the agenda.
That's true.
We know that women are mostly affected by it. And that's why actually we speak a lot about it around violence against women and girls. Women and girls are affected mostly about it. Now, the second part of your question is around the economic cost. The economic cost.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not have figures with me now, but I will tell you that women lose their lives. That means that a person who's supposed to sit here, do work, is not going to be there. They will miss their jobs. They will leave jobs. They will do. There's quite a lot. They will stop contributing to the economic development of the continent because of gender-based violence. And
women
that's
feed
a
the
huge
family.
cost. Feeding family is doing quite a lot, and ultimately their health, their lives are also on the line because of violence against women. So it's a huge thing, and it's not just a physical problem; it's a mental problem as well. Because imagine being in a toxic environment and you're waking up in a toxic environment every day. I don't think you can.
So can you walk us through some of the practical programs that you are running, to create awareness about gender-based violence, and how are young people themselves involved in it? When I came, I've seen some posters around about gender. So walk us through a little bit, particularly young people.
I have to keep on reminding you that the AU does not implement; it sets a normative framework.
Right.
But on this particular one, I also want to tell you that the AU does a few things just to demonstrate some things. The positive masculinity in leadership, which is the initiative I just spoke to you about, is one of the initiatives. But recently, this summit that ended last week also launched the campaign on ending violence against women. This is a campaign that we're going to be rolling out in member states. So this is going to be interesting to see, because it will answer your question, because this is a campaign that will run with countries, and it will happen at the country level where the people are at that level. It will roll out. I mean, we got the decision last week, so sleeves are rolled. We are ready to run with it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and you were asking a question about young people specifically. Yeah. There's quite a few other things. And in fact, what we do now, even this campaign, it will segment them. So we segment them into the work that we do. Even the conversation around positive masculinity, it is segmented young people as a special group.
From where you sit, Prudence, how ready do you think women on our continent and young people on our continent are ready for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area?
On behalf of women, we are ready. On behalf of young people, we're ready. I think, look, market access is a very important thing for the continent. You and I were speaking about unemployment, but a lot of, you know the numbers, in terms of the numbers, I might not remember the numbers right now, but quite a lot of the SMEs on the continent is women and young people.
No doubt about it.
So there's a lot of them even at the border areas and all of that. But you see, if we could open the market a bit more to say that I can sit in Eswatini and be able to go and do my trade in Botswana or in Togo, that's what women are waiting for.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the challenges. I mean, opening the market is not just by word. There are a lot of practical steps that need to be taken. Today, as we speak, it's difficult for our women to even cross the border. A lot of policy issues that make it so difficult for women to, do trade and all of that. How is the directorate involved in addressing some of these things? For example, one of the key things, which as I travel around, I talk to ministers and what have you, everybody seems to know and think that something must be done about it. And the question is, how long are we going? Free movement of people.
The integration agenda is an AU agenda.
Right.
It's an Agenda 2063 agenda.
Yeah.
Free movement of people.
And the right
whether
of residents.
for skills portability, because I have skills and another country can benefit from
Absolutely.
them. Whether for market access.
Right.
And whether for tourists. But really opening up our borders is one of the important agendas that are sitting highest table of the conversations on the continent.
Your directorate in charge of women and youth, and they are the majority of the people involved in this trade.
Exactly. So again, I mean, I think you look at it as it's a whole AU ecosystem.
Yeah, sure.
Our brothers or sisters, the ACFTA, are actually positioned. They're the ones that are actually driving specifically this agenda. And of course, we are working with them, and it's important for us in terms of this agenda. Again, you know, the AU has organs, their courts.
Absolutely, sure.
So specifically, we're looking at this protocol because all of the things that you're speaking about, now we need to work with ACFTA, which is a work that we're already doing with them, to now take it down to the level of a person. Because right now, it's a policy documented at this level, hanging there. So now we need to make it practical for the young person who wants to trade across border, who wants to cross a border, who wants to do this, who has a skill as a teacher and wants to go and teach in another country. That's going to be the next work with the summit decision of adopting the protocol.
Okay.
Taking it down, unpacking it.
Look, let's be practical, Prudence. A lot of these talks take place. I mean, here in this building, a lot of talks take place. But when it comes to practical implementation, it becomes a terrible thing. I mean, tariffs. Okay? Women who are the bulk and majority in this SME space, they are facing a lot of barriers at the border, for example. And how long are we going to continue to talk? I mean, you look at the experience we had here yesterday night, assessing this country and all of that. It's easier for you to move from here to Europe than to move within the continent. And you cannot talk of AFCTA without the movement of people. And I must say, your director is in charge of, yes, the secretary, we are working with them and all of that, but you are in charge of women, and your women and the young people are the majority in trade, especially in the informal sector. The last time I came to meet Mr. Muchanga, we talked about the AU passport. He said we've started with the laissez-passer, which enables businesses that have presence in 12 countries to have access. And I asked him, how many women and young people can have presence in 12 countries for us to have a laissez? But of course, it's a good initiative, it's a step in the right direction. But the question is, you as the director of the Directorate of Women, Gender and Youth, when you meet William Kelly, the General Secretary and all of that, and the ministers, what do you tell them? When are you guys going to open up?
I wish I could tell them like that.
You should.
But let me tell you that I think in the beginning we were speaking about frustrations and things moving a bit slow and all of that.
Yes.
It's a very it's
frustrating, right?
Yeah. So, but also it's being in this space and multilateralism. It's a space that says allow a lot of things to happen and a lot of engagement from different players. And I want to make an example of one of the challenges you spoke about, tariffs.
Yeah.
Tariffs is not a matter of the directorate or ACFTA
No.
This or that.
Yeah.
However, me now as the director of gender and women on the continent should be able to create a space to listen to the women,
Absolutely.
so that the women tell us that
That's what
this is where it itches me the most.
Yeah.
It's the tariffs, it's this, it's that, it's this. And then we should create the space that brings the people who should respond to that.
No, I think-
and create the space, because again, we have the convening power. We can get ministers, we can,
No,
so it's-
Prudence, if you have the convening power, I think the challenges we know. A lot of studies have been done on these things. I mean, I can cite you not less than 10 cases, studies that have been done. We know the challenges. So what I would please urge you, if you have the convening power with your Commissioner for Trade, well, let's move faster, because it is militating against the progress of
It
the
is-
AFCTA.
Yes. No, so let me also say that we are moving faster.
This time, no slow.
So we are moving.
Yeah.
Let me say we're not moving. Let me not say we're moving faster.
yeah.
Let me say we're moving.
Yeah.
Because again, landmark, and I was speaking to you, there's been one of the conversations you're speaking to, quite a number of conversations. There is a process that led to the protocol that
Right.
got adopted.
Yes.
But let's also focus on that. So how do we turn this now into something that will touch the lives of a young girl in
Yeah,
Kumasi,
yeah,
or a young man somewhere else?
Kampala.
In Kampala. So that's where the conversation is right now. But I think we'll be making a mistake to make it seem like there's nothing that's happening.
Oh, no.
There's
I
nothing
don't
there.
think that there's any African today who thinks that nothing is being done. At least we've seen the last couple of months, a lot of countries, for example, even opening up their borders.
Actually.
Except Kenya, we said free visa, but it's not free visa. I told them, I just came back from Kenya interviewing the CEO of the National Youth Council, and we talked about that. You say free border to the whole world, only for you to get to the border is you have to pay $35, which is not free. In a sense, it's a sham. Okay? But the study we are told is that it's part of the teething problems that will be
It
dealt with, which is okay.
is.
But again, if we are not started with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and try to implement it, would it have?
Exactly.
So we are making some progress, except that if you look at the fact that the rate at which the youth unemployment is rising,
We need to match
and
the
how
energy.
innovative our young people and women are, particularly if you look at the study that the UNECA just published, if we take care of cross-border trade, the total trade among Africans will increase by not less than 35%. So what are we waiting for?
I like that you said that, because again, we've been testing quite a few things with the young people in the past few years. I'll tell you about this initiative that we are running with Trace.
Right.
Because the studies that you're speaking to are telling us this is where the jobs are. Jobs are no longer where they were when you and I were growing
Right.
up.
Absolutely.
Teacher, nurse, doctor,
Sure.
Young people want to be influencers. Young people want to be DJs. Young people want to be this. So we're running a cohort of young people in the creative sector.
That's what I was
We're
coming to tell you.
training young
Absolutely.
people to be influencers, to be dressers for, they should be doing our makeup.
Let me
they'll
ask you,
do
how are you
all
doing
of
that?
this.
How are you doing that?
We're working with Trace. They are in the industry. They're
Right.
in the creative
Right.
industry. So
Right.
they run the Trace Academia. It has a number of courses based on this place where the new jobs are. How to write a script, how to mix music, we're working with them and we're testing. We want to go into the field and do that. And you'll be surprised. We did a call to young people to say who would be interested in this sort of things. The number of applications that we're receiving.
Are you
And
getting the
interest from young
support of
people.
member countries?
We are going to member countries. Of course, I mean, look, it's the young people come from the member countries. Now, we will need to move that to a certain policy conversation that says, if I come with a certificate as an influencer, it should be a certificate that is recognized. It should be a certificate that is, because that's where the jobs are
Absolutely.
now. Yeah, so that's a new area. I'm saying this because you're speaking about innovation and you're speaking about what are we doing? Are we doing something? There's another cohort that is run by our sister department, Commissioner Mchanga's department, on a cohort of women in agro processing.
Wonderful.
And again, we're doing the same thing. We're saying, can we take a cohort of women through the entire value chain, skill them, help them to brand their business, help them to market their business, bring mentors to them, grant them, give them some kind of money to start and run with it.
Interesting. I'm happy to hear this. And the other thing I want us to look at, I mean, if we do all these things and the critical mindset issue of the young people, we don't address them, it's going to be a decline.
Yeah.
Today we are dealing with young people who have a microwave mindset, something that, they want to make it overnight. So, Prudence, let me ask, what sort of programs do you have? You talk of skills, you talk of financing and all of that. All these things cannot take us far if the current attitude of our young people are not addressed. So how are we addressing that?
We actually have a huge pillar of our work on youth engagement. So it's speaking to young people, but listening to them and saying what are the issues that affect young people, and so that when we design programs or when we speak to member states about the programs that they should be implementing, it's curated from a place of this is what the young people are requesting. And I just made an example of this. Young people in the creative sector. It's something that people were not thinking about, or maybe they were, but it's not in the mainstream. So we're beginning to say to member states, wait a minute, yes, scholarships are good, yes, they should be doctors, they should be engineers, but also young people are interested in this. So we're listening more to the young people. In fact, there's a campaign that the AU is running currently around Be the Future Today, because it's a conversation with young people and young people telling us that we don't want you to keep the future for us. We're here now, and it's happening now.
Anyway, so you are giving the young people and the women of Africa the assurance that the directorate is doing a lot to help them to position themselves for the future. That's what you're saying.
The directorate, with our stakeholders,
Yes.
with our partners, with our member states, with the AU ecosystem.
But you are providing the strategic direction and the oversight.
We are
Yes.
working with all these partners.
Yes.
We are looking into the issues of women,
Absolutely.
and we are committed to the issues of women. And it's important for us because Agenda 2063, women and young people are 85% of the population. You said 77, it's actually 85.
85.
So what is happening even much more on the figures is that most young people are women. Most women are young people. So this is the 85% of the population. It's important for us to achieve Aspiration 6 of Agenda 2060. Because whose potential are we going to unleash if we don't unleash the potential of this 85%?
There's a question I always ask my guests. How can Africa harness its potential, resources, to own almost all these programs that we are innovating, rather than depend on donors and what? I'm not saying we should do away with partners and all of you, but in a situation where you have majority of your budget run, provided by external sources, rather than generating them locally, how are we going to be able to sustain them?
I think this is a conversation that is on the table for the continent as well. And I think you'll see, even internally, more and more of our member states and us, we want to take responsibility for our own development as a continent. And a lot of the resources is also coming. Member states are coming up and they're paying up to make sure that we do the things that we want to do. However, we've not reached the stage where we can say, absolutely, get rid of partners.
No, we can't.
But yes, we recognize for sustainability as well that a lot of the things we need to also be here and do it for ourselves.
And when did this conversation start?
It's a conversation that has been ongoing for quite a while.
And where are we now with regard to percentage-wise?
I will
Let's
not
take, for
tell
example,
you
yesterday I was at Zimbabwe. I spoke to the executive secretary of the Africa Capacity Building Foundation, and some of these issues where we're talking about. We seem to talk a lot as Africans. We seem to, have fantastic ideas, but when we come to where putting your flesh to it, we shy away in terms of financing.
Yeah.
Where is the problem coming from?
I wouldn't know. I don't want to pretend as if I would know where the problem is. But I think also
I like your diplomacy.
Look. let me. No, I don't want to act like I would say this is where the problem comes.
Yes.
But I think, look, for me, what is important is recognition and saying that we recognize that we should do and we should do more.
Good.
I think that's
a very important
There's
point.
willingness. We want to do more, and I want to move away from countries and say, Prudence, I may want to own a jet tomorrow. There's willingness. I like it. I have passion, but it might just be a matter of I don't have the money to put in there. But look, I would do anything that will make me to be able to do that. So let me put small what I have to make sure that I get into the stream. I'm speaking in parables now.
Well, I know you've been very. I like your diplomacy, as I mentioned, but I understand. I've been on this space for quite some time, so when I understand. So let me. What gives you sleepless nights?
Young people, women.
Why?
Youth bulge.
Why?
The numbers. I think the projection is that by the year 2050, there's going to be a huge
Out
potential
of
of women.
by the year by the year 2045,
Yes.
out of every 5 people you meet on this planet, 1 will be an African.
One
And
will
the
be an
question we are asking is, what kind of leadership, quality leadership, are we going to get from these young people? What training, what capacity are we helping them to build? What is your directorate doing?
So you are speaking to, you asked
Yes.
me a question and I was responding to you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what keeps me
Frustrated,
awake.
awake, sure.
Because my question is, how do we innovate in the space?
Mm-hmm.
How do we do business unusual? How do we do things in a way that, because business usual
Right. Will not take us far.
will make us do things
Repeat
and
the things we've
reinvent-
been doing. Yeah,
exactly.
reinvent them.
So because of, and you said it, because the numbers are rising, whether it's unemployment or it's actually the numbers of young people, we need to also make
And now
our
there's
efforts
suicide
and
taking place now. A lot of young people are committing suicide
mental
now.
health.
Yes.
It's mental health. So it's a number of things, and it's a number of things affecting one set of or group of people on the continent, and those are the ones that are actually supposed to be the ones to take the leadership and turn the wheel around. So that keeps me awake. And to respond to the question that you have on your mind, it's important
How do you
for
know my
me.
mind?
It's because you know. So it's important for me that,
Yes.
even as part of my legacy,
Right.
it's important for me that I position the directorate to be in a space that does not do business as usual.
I guess you are the first director for this directorate.
Actually, oh yeah, maybe
Yes, yes.
as a
Substantive.
as a directorate for women, gender, and youth. Yes,
Yes.
but before there was the Women Gender Development Directorate. But yes, I'm the first director.
Right.
Of the Euro
So
Strategy.
then, how do we ensure? I mean, we've talked about a number of, but this is a serious matter, Prudence. Serious matter. I have been in youth space for more than 35 years, and I can tell you that the way things are going on this continent, if we don't take care, we would lose a lot of the things we are building. So I'm glad that you accept that sometimes you get frustrated. But the question is, how can we all innovate? And this brings me to the issue of faith-based institutions. You have a continent where almost 99% of the people are religious or faith-based inclined. They go to church or they are Muslims. There's the African traditional religion as well, almost about 3%. Why have we not included them in these policy discourses all over at the continental level? I asked the same question to His Excellency Ambassador Muchanga, and his response was, that is good if we can organize them. But my question is, why have we left them behind all this time? All this while?
Actually, we have not left them behind. We have, together with UN Women, even established the, is it the Confederation of Traditional and Religious and Traditional Leaders in Africa, the COTLA. They work with us to address, for example, issues of harmful practices for women and girls. And specifically, Africa as a continent, we're very religious or traditional people. 90% of the people, they're either in church or they're in a mosque. It's important for us it's opinion leaders. It's important for us to make sure that they also play their part because they have audience of these people. That's why I said, again, it's building the ecosystem and making sure that everybody's playing their part. So it's recognizing the role of the traditional and religious leaders and empowering them, capacitating them, giving them the agenda, because we set the agenda and we're telling them this is where it's a problem now for the continent, harmful practices, or the problem right now is this. The problem now is ending violence against women and girls. So what role do you play in it? So we're already in engagement with them. They're actually a structure that we work with specifically in this directorate.
I see. So how has been the output with their involvement?
It's been a lot of capacity building for them, but we've actually even seen things. We've seen things, and I know of a case in Zambia where a chief stood up in a meeting and said, in my community where I'm a chief, I've stopped all child marriages. They don't happen. You go do child marriage, you go to court. And we see more and more of those coming up from traditional leaders, from religious leaders and all of that.
And even access to finance and all of that. You go to most of traditional communities, the land is owned by the husband, assets are owned by the men. If the woman wants a loan, he goes to the bank, he says, bring collateral, he doesn't have.
Yeah.
So I think a lot can be done.
They can do a lot more.
So we hope that you would help us with your directorate to address some of these things. Now, let's end this conversation by, you are the first director of this directorate. And I come to your office, you have a fantastic office. Africa is proud. Tomorrow, if you are not here, they say that whatever lasts is not the money what lasts most is not the money we have in the bank account. It's not the buildings we have. And like I started by saying that you have on your shoulder a critical segment of the population of Africa,
Exactly.
the women and youth. How do you want them to remember you as a director of this directorate?
It's a huge responsibility.
I know.
As you're saying, it actually scares me.
When
It's
I was
really-
coming in, I thought I
Yeah.
was going to, see somebody who is sad but you boost,
No, you can't.
best
You
in
can't.
joy and all
Do you
of that.
care
I know.
about my mental health?
So,
No,
what kind of legacy do you want?
Look, I think for me, the legacy is really around first of all, making sure that I build on the things that my predecessors done, because I don't want to pretend as if I came and I established this directorate.
Of course.
But also there's a constituency of women and young people that have been running, and they're still running. They're doing quite a lot of things in their own corners. So not my legacy. What is important is that to make sure that I position my legacy in a space that builds on to those things. But if there's one thing that I'm passionate about for women and for young people, is their voices. I think specifically young people, they say, we know the AU, we read about it. Some of them don't even know the AU. But how do we make sure that they see the AU as their AU as well? And they see the AU as a space where they can bring their voices to say, this is where it itches the most for us. This is where it troubles us. And those things don't just sit at them coming in here or telling us. It goes up to the highest possible places, and it becomes, for example, the convention that has come up now. It is the voices of women who are saying we cannot sit in these spaces where we're being violated. So it's going and it's influencing the whole agenda of the continent. So I want personally in my time to make sure that we continue to harness the voices of women and young people and make sure that they inform the policy direction for the things that matter to them.
And how are you going to do that?
We're already doing it. I mean, we're building networks of women. We're working with the constituencies. We have quite a number of constituencies of women
Are
and
we
young
going
people.
to see more women parliamentarians?
We want to see more women parliamentarians. That's a network that is important for us. We want to see a lot more women governors, central bank governors. We want to see more prudences. It shouldn't end with me. We want to see more of everything.
That's exciting. I just come from Zimbabwe. I interviewed 3 ministers. All of them are women. And fantastic women. The role they've played in the country is amazing. So I hope that what you are saying, a lot more women would tap into it. And then, anyway, so I'm going to ask you to speak to the young people and women of Africa. From the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the SMEs, the gender-based, anything on your heart that you want young people, as the director of the Directorate for Women, Gender and Youth. This is the African Union. So in a sense, we can say you are the representative of the entire women and youth in this continent. What have you got to tell them in your final?
Yeah. So one important message for me, for the women and young people of the continent, is that, look, there are structures that have been set up to aid and respond to the issues of women and young people. Make use of the structures. Make use of us. We're one of the structures. And but most importantly, you're the custodians of your own development. You may not be sitting here with us today, but being custodians of your own development, hold us accountable. Hold us accountable for all the decisions and all the big words, the grand things that we say. Hold us accountable and make sure that we deliver. This starts from holding the AU accountable, but also hold your parliamentarians accountable for the laws that are passed at the national level. Hold everybody with their shirt and make us respond and honor this grand things that we come up with at that level.
Well, I don't know if there's anything I can add, except to say that if you have any question for Miss Prudence or feedback, please don't hesitate to let us know. If there's anything that you want us to follow up on, let us know. And I can assure you, we would follow up and get it for you. And now I'm sure when we knock at the door, we'll get response within a second, because she's come to realize that together, collaboratively, we can do great things. This has been Channel 63, and our hope and our objective is to ensure that we can build the Africa that we want. And for young people and for the women, you have a critical role to play. As Prudence has already said, all that she's saying is that work with them, work with your parliamentarians, work with your national officers, and be in the center space, because your voice also matters. Thank you for watching. We'll come back to you again.
Africa needs you.